Hey, 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 welcome back everyone to Shamanic Soul Sisters episode 21. Maria here, coming to you from New Mexico.
Woo woo! And Samantha here, coming still from Massachusetts. I really get around.
You do travel.
That's true. I do. And I do a lot of interdimensional travel with my third eye. So,
This is true.
welcome back, everybody. Last episode, we talked about surrendering to the now moment. And when we don't do that, how we can be limited. So, we're going to talk about manipulation today. Um, Manipulation versus shifting of energy, and how we don't even realize sometimes when we're manipulating people and situations until we become conscious of it. And Maria brought a lot of that into my conscious awareness when I visited her in April. But I went to the vet last week, and I had to get shots from my dog. I only got her the rabies shots, and I went there knowing that I needed to get them. And as soon as the vet came into the room, she didn't say hi to me. She just said, "Oh, how's Lily? Has she been vomiting, diarrhea, blah, 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 blah?" And I said, "Nope, she's healthy. She's good. Just here for the rabies shot." And she's like, "Oh my God, you're denying all vaccines. You break my heart." And I looked at her. She just didn't look at me. And I was like, "Okay, I'll wait till she looks at me." And she goes, "Well, what have you been feeding her? What's her diet?" And I said, "Oh, I make her food. I have this holistic." And before I even finished, she was like, "You're breaking my heart. I can't believe you're doing this to your dog. What if something happens to your dog?" And she started coming at me with all of these. It was her fears, right? She started coming at me with all of these comments. And in the past, I got very defensive, and I would try and go into my nursing, even though I know dogs are not the same as humans, but energy's energy. And I would put my 2 cents in. This time, I kind of just sat there, and I was like, well, I'm glad that it's not my heart that's breaking. And I laughed at the rest of the interaction between us because I realized she was trying to shame me unconsciously to do something for my dog. And I can see how, like, there was points where I was like, wait, am I doing the right thing? Like, oh my God, should I not be feeding her the food? Should I be getting her this shot? Should I? Like, I went into all of these like internal questions that I didn't have prior. Like, I was sovereign when I walked in there. I was like, this is what I want. I'm gonna not let anyone change my mind. I trust in how I work with my dog and what my dog needs. I'm gonna listen. And then I'm gonna listen to me. I mean, but I can see how people could be shift persuaded, we'll say persuaded by certain practitioners based on the practitioner's fears. And so this situation made me realize even more so the impact that so many people in certain industries and businesses can manipulate our thinking for us to step out of our truth and what we originally want, because it's like, well, they're coming at me so direct that like they must be right, let me give my power to them. And I realized, no, I'm not giving my power to anyone, but I'm also not going to make her feel less than for her own opinions. Like, it was just this huge internal conscious shifting awareness around the energy of, we'll say, manipulation. And so I wanted to share this story because at the end of I was going to say the session, but at the end of the appointment, she ended up laughing with me. And I think that she realized, because I didn't give in. Um, I don't, I think she realized that her words were not appropriate, like the comment she made, because I felt her energy shift by the end of the appointment. And I realized when I walked out of there, like, I felt good. I didn't feel guilty for like standing in my power. And I feel like a lot of people need to kind of maybe hear this story or can relate to similar stories where they're like, I'm going in, I believe in this, I want to do this. and then all of a sudden someone else puts their opinion in, and then you shy away from what your original truth was.
Mhm.
Do you agree?
1000%. And it's interesting because it's such a similar experience that you went through with the jab, literally,
Mm-hmm.
like the same thing, right? So what Sam is, the example she shared is so, it's what's happening on such a broad scale, within this system, right? Man has been manipulated really from the start, right? And from the powers that be that want to control. Why do we manipulate? Because we want control. Why do we want control? Because we're living in some sort of state of fear, right? And most of the time it's unconscious. But your example highlights how, especially when we go into establishments, that there are experts, right? And so it's way easier to get swayed as a common person going in, right? Like whether you yourself are the patient or it's your animal, right? We put all of this, I'm sorry, but blind faith and trust in people that we perceive to know better than we know.
Mm.
And that's what the majority of us do. Like we talk about giving our power away. That's how humans give their power away. We deny our own truth and allow other people, based on, whether it's the job they have, their age, or whatever it is that we perceive them to be superior or more knowing, we give our power away and we basically let them think for us. And that is what the
Ah,
world is
yeah.
in right now. And a lot of us are starting to see that, like, oh my God. And I think we talked about it in the last episode, like our beliefs. Where do they come from? Where do our beliefs come from? Right? Like when you start to ask yourself that, it's so empowering, but it's so scary too, because it's like, oh my God, half of these beliefs that I would, stake my life on that they're true. They were never even like an original thought of mine. It came from someone somewhere else that I perceived to be more knowing than myself, right? And that's
Mm.
why like knowing our truth is so so important, cuz you could have easily been, well, you couldn't have easily been swayed in this situation, but many people could have, right? Like
Yeah.
when I tell people what I do for my dogs, like treating them holistically, I get a lot of different judgment, right? It's judgment that comes
Yeah.
at you. And judgment really is just because we judge what we don't understand or what we fear, what we don't know. And that's what I feel like the energy that vet was coming at you with. It was judgment because
Mhm.
she's coming from this place of like, she's the expert. She knows better. And how dare you go against what science says, right? And that is like one of the biggest fights right now that we're having, like globally. Like, how dare you go against what science says? Well, science is supposed to always be evolving. Science is just like a minute aspect of things. It's knowing that's why intuition is so important, because when you're intuitive, you know your truth and you know what is most aligned for you, right? And you honor that and you stick to it. But manipulation is something that, yeah, Sam and I talked about when she visited me in April, because it's something that I have really been reflecting on, like where in my life have I unconsciously manipulated people, right? Thinking that I was
Mhm.
coming from a place of either love or whatever it is. Or a lot of us think we know better for everybody else. I mean, that's kind of like a human trait I hear come out of a lot of people's mouths, is like we seem to know better for everybody else, but unfortunately we can't like seem to get our own lives like on the up and up. So it's just funny how we're experts for everyone else, but you know, with that said, that's where a lot of manipulation comes from. It's like if you find yourself giving unsolicited advice, that's a form of like manipulation. You're basically telling someone what to do. And you may think that it's coming from a place of care and concern, right? There's
Mhm.
many people that believe the intent is like, well, I know this from my experience, and so I'm going to share this with them because it's going to help them, right? So manipulation, also understand there is not always this conscious ill intent behind it. And I think that's what you and I
Correct.
talked a lot about, like in
Yeah.
April. It's like if you're unaware of your fears, so again, it's bringing your unconscious to the conscious awareness. If you're unaware of your fears, your insecurities, your traumas, that is going to come out in manipulation of other people. And you don't even know you're doing it. You literally think you're coming from a place of love. Now, the powers that be, they know what they're doing with the manipulation. But because it's been so instilled in us from the start, it's part of our like hardwiring in as a human. It's like the ego wants to manipulate because it wants to control, because it lives in a state of fear. It doesn't trust things. It doesn't trust the way life unfolds for us here, because life is very messy. So
Yep.
yeah, manipulation is some it's a very interesting energy to connect with, and ask yourself, where have I done this and where have I been manipulated? Because that was all the messages I was getting from spirit the last couple of months, of all of the areas that I have been master manipulated in my life for a long time. And I hold no more resentment or anger, because I see the energy for what it is. I see that it is not a consciously intentional thing most of the time. I say most of the time because some of us also know when we're doing it too.
Yes, we definitely do. I love that you said think for us, because that is, I was like, whoa, that's
Yeah.
literally what it is. Like, holy shit, you're trying to think for me. And that just brought me into like so many like epiphanies that like I knew, but now I like, oh, where people will come for like readings or sessions, right? And they're like, well, how do I do that? And I'm like, you have to feel it. You have to, I can sit here and tell you all day what you're to do, like what your soul is telling you to do, but
Right.
you have to do it yourself to feel the change, right? Like, because we don't actually shift internally until we start feeling us, like, and trusting our intuition. And I had a bunch of clients yesterday, but one of them, oh, she's lovely. She was like, so I haven't talked to you in a year. And she goes, but last time you told me this, this, and this, and you really told me like I need to speak up. And people are putting me down or trying to change my opinion or force their opinion on me. And I was like, oh, really? She goes, and I've been doing it and it's so freeing and I feel so good. And I was like, oh my God. Like, I was like so excited. She's like, so, and then everything she was saying, like that I shared with her in the reading, she took the tools and did it. And she's like, I just feel so like, so I'm here for my year checkup because like I did everything and I just feel like, what's next? And so, like, that's not a form of manipulation when you go in and you share and she takes the tools and then she uses it and empowers herself, right? Manipulation is sitting there like, you should do this. This is what you need to do. And it's like the tone, right? It's she felt the love in the session, right? And I was thinking about this today as I was walking, like humility. I know this is not the same as manipulation, but we're limitless. We surrender to what comes up.
Well, humility is like quite the opposite
Oh, okay. Well,
of manipulation.
oh, there we
It's
go.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's why it's coming in. Yin yang
Okay.
girl.
You're so smart.
It's really when I feel into it's like the opposite of it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's nice. But I
She's
was
like,
walking
that's
to
nice.
well, I felt it. Like my heart's warm.
I love it.
Um, because when I was walking today, I was thinking about all the readings that I did just yesterday and then all of them. And I was like, wow, since leaving the hospital, I've done thousands and thousands of sessions for people. And like I feel like not being attached to the validation and not being attached to the outcome of us doing the readings is what keeps us humble, because when we do have people come back and they say comments and how it shifted their life, you feel in you this warmth, like this, like, oh, like this exchange of appreciation for life. Like,
Yes.
thank you for hearing me and seeing me, and thank you for receiving. Like, wow.
Yep.
Right. And so that energy, I was just like, I feel so humbled. Like, even though like my life can be kind of messy right now, inside, I feel so calm and humbled. And yet I can see outside where there's so much unconsciousness and manipulation happening. And so it was this like strong feeling of gratitude. It was like the more we become unattached from outcomes and the things that we share with people, the more humble we are.
Mhm.
Because when we're attached, we manipulate. And that's the unconsciousness.
Correct. And I love that you shared that because I had a similar conversation with a coaching client the other day who I'm helping her, connect with her spiritual gifts, and she's doing sessions for clients, and basically kind of talked about how, like, yeah, having that not attachment to people's outcomes is so important because you're already serving from a high place doing what we're doing, right? Like what we're offering as far as healings, readings, whatever it is, whatever the modality. We're already coming from like a loving place to start off with, right? And so what the individual that comes for the session is coming for, it's up to them. It's not up to us to determine what they need to heal, what they need to fix, what they need to work on, right? Like we're that
Mhm,
channel, and when you really are that channel, you're allowing the information to come in, but then you have no attachment to how it's received. You know that you've done your duty. You've done your role. You've been that channel, you've given the messages, and then you plant your seeds, right? That's not manipulation. I do not feel that planting seeds is manipulation. Planting seeds is sharing information. That's it. It's getting
mhm,
people to think outside of the very boxed way of thinking that we've been manipulated and controlled and brainwashed into thinking. So it's a planting a seed of a thought, of an idea, of a concept, but it's like you said, tone means so much. Like that's how I can really discern manipulation is people's tone. There can be a very condescending energy to it. There's a shaming, like what you basically experienced at the vet. There's
mhm,
like this shaming energy, this judgment, right? And it's because that individual really is dealing with something internally that they're self-judging themselves for, right? And can't look at that, can't see that, hasn't brought that unconsciousness to the conscious awareness yet. But being able to discern when you're being manipulated is so key in remaining sovereign, like in
yes.
holding your truth. It doesn't mean that you can't be open to other people's perspectives either, or that you can't change your mind. Like I don't, everything we talk about is not so black and white. It's for me, like being humble means you are open minded and you know that you don't know it all. You know your truth up to this point, right? But you're also open to other information. You're open to other people's truth. You're humble. You have no need to manipulate when you're humble. I'm so glad you brought
Mhm,
the energy of humility into this because it's so important, I feel, as practitioners. I mean, it's an important trait as humans, but if you're a practitioner that's literally doing this kind of work for people, humility should be one of our key traits, to be honest. Like
yeah.
that's when you're serving from the highest and best. You're not trying to prove anything to your client that you're right about what came through. That's another thing that is a thing I've
Mm.
observed, right? On both ends, where a client is testing a practitioner
Oh,
to
yeah.
prove, right? But then I've also seen practitioners that are trying to prove to the client like that
Mhm,
what they're getting is right. And I've even witnessed like them changing information in the reading to serve what the client was looking for. That's manipulation.
yep.
That's all forms of manipulation. That's not truth. That's taking information and molding it with an intent of trying to
Acceptance.
control.
And because you want acceptance.
Right. yeah. So
Yeah.
check in with self. Why am I doing this? Because I want to be accepted as a highly regarded reader. I want to be accepted for what I offer. Like, that's not why we do that. That's not why I do this work,
Yeah, no.
right? That's not what I'm here to serve people with. And, but it takes a lot of conscious awareness and work on self to keep self in check to make sure we're not doing that, right? I don't
Mhm.
feel like I'm ever doing it in session, but in human life, I can still see where that will trickle out because I'm a human and I've been manipulated as we all have been. So it's an energy within me, right? And I still have my own unconscious fears even though I've brought so many of them to the surface. There's still many in there, right? So it's just being aware of like, and it goes back to what Sam and I have talked about so many times because this is the whole premise of shamanism is intention. What is your intent of why you're saying something to someone? What
Mhm.
is your intent behind the message? Because that's going to help you discern whether or not you're manipulating. Is the intent truly coming from a place of love, or can you get really honest with yourself and recognize when it's coming from your own insecurity or your own fear?
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
even had a conversation with my mom the other day about, the energy of worry, right? And
Mhm.
when we worry about people. And Sam and I have had so many real life awakenings with like, when you're sending that energy of worry to the people you love, you're literally sending them fear consciousness. You're
Yep.
literally envisioning worst case scenario and energetically sending that to that individual.
Yep.
And my parents have been worrying about me a lot the last few months because I've been going through a lot. And I know it's part of the parental role to worry about your kids. But then there's this part of me that's like, I'm 39 years old. I'm an adult. And
Yeah.
I had a very like real kind of like I had to say it to my mom the other day because I had mentioned how I went out on a little hike by myself. And she was like, and I knew it as soon as I said it. I felt her like and then she came right out and said it. Well, I don't like that you're out walking by yourself and hiking by yourself. And I don't like that you're doing that. Sorry, mom, I have to like use this as a
Yeah.
real life
We
example
love you.
because we love you and it's what it is. We're all learning. Like
Yeah.
I went through this 2 years ago when everybody in my family got the jab and I was in a
Mhm.
state of worry and fear and like, no, don't do that, guys. Like, what are you doing? You're like not listening to me. Like totally disregard the fact that I'm medical, but also that I'm tapped in and like giving you some pretty sound advice right now to maybe not do it. But oh my God, you all did it, right? Like that was when I really
Yep.
started realizing that me sending fear energy at them, they're their own sovereign beings. They get to choose what they get to choose, right? Whether I
Mhm.
agree with it or not, whether I think that their choice was conscious or not, they still made a choice. And
Mhm.
that's being able to be humble and honor that everybody has a choice and we may not always agree with it. And I guarantee there's a lot of people that don't agree with my choices right now. And I'm getting to be okay with that
Mhm. Yeah.
because
And I'm
it's
sure
not
there's
about
people that listen and don't agree with what we're talking about right now
thousand
because
percent.
they're not ready to hear it or you're not ready to
Correct.
receive it, right?
Correct.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yep. And we're not trying to manipulate you.
Yeah.
We're
We're just
literally
talking.
just sharing our understanding of what this energy feels like. And like, cause we had like a full blown couple-hour conversation about like manipulation and like, oh my God, I was manipulating here. Oh my God, I manipulated there. Holy shit. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Right.
I
But
was
it's
like,
being,
oh,
oh my God. Wait, so am I manipulating? I'm like, no, no. No, you're not manipulating right now. And that can get because as energy workers, we are shifting energy. We're
yeah.
shifting awareness. But also remember that when people come to us for a session, right off the bat, they're coming to us for a session. They are giving us permission to give them the guidance. Now, their ego doesn't always love what comes in. However, them booking and paying for the session is them opening that door to allow us to give them the guidance, right? So we're not giving unsolicited advice, first of all. And we are not Sam and I are so intentional in how we set our intention that what we're pulling forward for the client is for their highest and best. Nothing other than that.
Yeah.
So that
So
is
it's
not
not,
manipulation.
yeah, and it's not advice.
No.
It's like this is what your soul, your spirit that is in you is needing from you, is trying to guide you with. Like we're not giving you, well, I did this, so this is what you should do. It's
Right.
like it's all about intention. And so I was sitting in Maria's RV and we're having this conversation and I'm on the top bunk and I just remember being like, I am not okay right now. Like I
I
am
know.
so not okay. Like
I know.
having this conversation because I've talked about in my like in the sacral chakra, well in all of these podcasts, I've gotten pretty personal. Like I'll be an open book. I have nothing to hide. I feel like if I need to hide myself, then that means that it's not really my truth or that I'm not ready to see it. So like fuck that. Like I'm here to be open and experience life. So when she's sharing like the energy of manipulation with me, because so we are all counterparts of different beings. Like there's star beings, there's animals, there's trees, there's colors, there's freaking planets, there's angels, whatever. Each of us has aspects of numerous of these, because if we're all one, we all divide into numerous things, right? But for the sake of confusion for this conversation, one of my most dominant guides, energies will say that I am here to really anchor into or to work with is the dragon energy, but also the lion energy. And um, that's why I feel so passionate about anger and that like anger is not bad, it's how it's used. And I've always had a very, we'll say, open, not necessarily balanced divine throat chakra, but it's been pretty open. And over the years, especially since I met Maria, I was like, oh my God, like I'm like balanced. Like I'm becoming balanced. Like I know how to use it for like to not like throw my pain out there, right? Like, or to throw my pain back inside me. I'm like, wow, I can just speak and feel cool. But the point of the story is that
Cool.
I work strongly with the dragon energy. Like I get light language with the dragons. I literally like shift into timelines and I'm with them. Like it feels like I'm actually that like that is my earth. Like it's weird. It's not weird, but I just have a lot of attachment, we'll say my soul, to the dragon spirit right now. And when Maria and I were talking about this, dragons were like the first healers, but they're also used for people fear dragons, right? Because you don't know. But we fear everything we don't know. And so I remember the first time I saw a dragon, the first time I saw a spirit anything, before even a human walking around that wasn't existing. It was a red dragon in my room. And I was like with my eyes open, I was like, hey. And I think I've mentioned this before, but I was like, hey, what's up, red dragon? Like, what are you doing in my room? And it was just like buzzing, like it was a little hologram. And I was like, thanks. And then it just flew off. And it took a few years until like I started reconnecting with the dragons because it wasn't till I was ready to connect with my own internal anger. What was I ready to connect with the dragon spirit or whatever. So dragons are very, what would you say, can be intense or can be intimidating. Their energy, right? Like their aura. What would you say?
Well, I see dragons like I see everything else. I There's a duality to all of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So there are dragons that we would say are good dragons, and there are dragons that we would say are bad dragons.
Mm-hmm.
When you break down what a dragon is, it is a reptilian.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that, right? I it's not so like when I connect with dragon energy, it's powerful. That's
There you
what
go.
it's power. But it's not always empowered.
Right.
Sometimes it's powerful and it's coming from the manipulation and
Mm-hmm.
it's coming from rage. It's coming from anger, like what you're saying. The dragon can breathe fire in that way very much, But then there's also the other side of the dragon that is the healer, as you said, that is the one that is here to create with the fire, not destroy with the fire. And that's
Mm-hmm.
something that you and I have talked about so many times about using that fire with the intent. What is the intent behind it? Is it rage and you're literally trying to destroy everything with it, right? Or is it passion and compassion and wanting to now create and birth something new, right? So to me,
Mm-hmm.
dragon energy, whether you're dealing with the yin or the yang of it, it's powerful. It's potent, and it's what I'm hearing, it's instant manifestation. It's like an instant manifester. It's
Yep.
like an instant. That's why it's so powerful. But knowing the energy that it's creating from is important,
Yeah.
because dragon energy can manipulate. And like I've read a lot about dragons and connected in just my connection with them, but just even what I've read about them, like how some of them get into people's heads to
Yep.
manipulate. But that's also that's the reptilian energy,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the dragons are some of the oldest, we'll say, living beings of the earth plane. I think that's why they hold so much power and wisdom, because they're like, some of the founders of this physical realm. So they hold a lot of information and a lot of codes within them. But it's when you're working with them, it's discerning what vibration dragon are you working
Yeah.
with. When you work with your dragons, I can feel it. They're high vibe dragons. They're and remember how like this year is like it's the Chinese year of the dragon, and what I've
Mm-hmm.
seen is it's all of the higher vibrational dragons that are like of an angelic frequency almost, are the ones that are waking up and coming down
Yeah.
to integrate their lower versions of them, so like the reptilian ego versions of them, just like what we're doing.
Yeah. I love that you just said powerful. That's what the word I was trying to go for, because I was like, what is the word? What is
Yeah,
the word?
it's like they're potent. They're just like
Yeah.
they're power. They're such power. And I just keep hearing they're like instant manifestation, instant manifestation.
Which,
They
if
are.
you've guys heard me set my intentions, it happens right away.
Yeah.
Well, um, that was the thing. When she said it gets into their psyche,
Mm.
right? Like the consciousness, I was literally zoomed out of my body. And this is where I started freaking out. And I,
She's like,
I
oh
think
my
I
God,
like,
oh my God.
yeah,
I
I think
manipulated
I
there
had to
and
like
there and
smoke
there.
because I was like, oh my God. And I like was zoomed out and I started seeing literally from a child, but all the way till I started getting my first job. Then I was bartending. Then when I worked in the strip club, then even nursing, like relationships and people where I observe. I can assess a room so quickly. Like, like that's why I can't read a book and expect to like understand it. Like I have to be in the energy of something. And I was shown me zooming out, like floating above it all, dropping in, seeing so many conversations I was not even having with people, but watching people have in their interactions until I was like, all right, now I'm going to step in. And then I stepped in because it's like I knew what all of them were operating from in order to literally manipulate. This is my younger me, manipulate the situation to get what I wanted. And I was like, holy shit, I do it. And like, oh my God. And then she was like, but you don't do that. You now are, you're in a higher vibration. Like I was like, I know, but that's like a lot to take in because I'm like, oh, shit, that makes so much sense of why when I've wanted something, I get it. Like when I, like, and I struggle,
Mm.
not struggle anymore. Like I don't want to say I struggle, but I'm very aware now of, do I want something or do I need it because it wants to feed my ego? Like I'm very aware of the energy I'm working at now. But that conversation, I was like, oh my God, because I can read, like, I don't want to say I can read minds, but my telepathy has increased a lot. Like I was walking in Walmart the other day and like all of a sudden like my foot started hurting, and then I heard, like, I didn't hear anyone, but I started getting angry, and I heard a conversation, and I was like, who is having that conversation? And I turn, and there's a person walking with a broken foot, so I released it. And then there's a mom and a dad, or a couple, talking about the baby, and they're having the conversation I was just having in my head, and I wasn't even near them. And I'm like, e e but it's been happening a lot. Like, I can watch people and I know exactly what they're thinking. And I'm like, this isn't, ooh, this is, if I didn't have uh good intent, that could be really bad. Like, that's really fucking scary to me a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
like that's, but it also, it just because we can, we'll say we have the power to dive into people's psyches because we do have a lot of codes. We also can quickly do it to self. We can quickly do it to self and like manipulate self and be like, nope, you want to do this. You want to do this. And it's like, but no, I didn't though. I did. Oh, no. Oh, now I'm doing it. Shit. Right. So the power doesn't just work outside, it works inside. And so yeah, it's just so interesting. So I was walking today with the humility, and I was like, wait, I'm like a badass. I'm like a heart centered dragon. I'm not like a, like. And then I met this guy. I did energy work on like 5 people at a private thing last week, and the last person was a guy, and I have never touched somebody who radiates the same energy as me. Like, people have said that when I walk places that like they feel my energy, they know I'm there. And I'm like, that to me, it's just my norm. Like, I don't think of that, right? When this guy lay down on the table and I touched him, Maria, my hands were like, like it felt like I had electricity running through my body, and I was seeing his dragon. He wasn't even a human on the table anymore. I wasn't. And I was like, holy shit, what is happening? And it was super powerful. And at the end, he sat down and I was like, so you have a lot of dragon energy? He goes, well, it takes one to know one. I was like, oh, so you know this. And it was so cool because we were able to have a conversation. And he did like a bunch of plant medicine things like a few years back. And he met this woman who said that she had a black dragon. And he goes, I was afraid of connecting with my dragon after that plant ceremony, because she, every time she came out of her journey, her energy was a little bit less like uh comforting. I forget the word he said, but he was just like, it like, ugh, like it didn't feel good. And so I asked her where she goes in her journeys, and she's like, oh, my black dragon, because when you have a dragon, can take you down into all the worlds. And so it takes me down into the depths of it, and we're just healing it. And he's like, she wasn't healing it. She was coming back with it. And she was like getting sucked into it because she was changing. Like, her face was like, he's like, so I've been afraid of my dragon. And I was like, well, I think that's why we're connecting, because you don't need to fear the dragon. It's the intent behind working with your dragon. And it's feeling the energy of what you're working with. Because, yeah, we can dive into lower worlds, but it's up to us to like let them overcome us, or just to go in to kind of see what's going on, right? To get awareness so we can,
Right.
what can we do in the higher vibration to bring healing and love into those, dimensions. And he's like, oh, he was like, I feel like my soul is like coming back alive. And I was like, oh, oh my God. So we can manipulate in so many ways, but like, not manipulate, we can shift energies in so many ways, but we can manipulate if we're unconscious to what we're doing.
Yes. That I think is the key, is our unconsciousness is what tends to manipulate. And I'm not saying there are not people that also conscious, like I said, I've consciously manipulated. I mean, I'd be lying to you if I said I haven't. Like, I know I
Mhm.
have. But it still is stemming from a fear or an insecurity, right? It's not with an ill intent, like, not that I've manipulated people into doing things that are going to harm them, right? But it's to get something I'm needing, right? It's to fulfill something that I need, right? Some void, some some insecurity or whatever, right? So there, and it's, I think we talked, Sam and I talked about it when we were talking about it in April, but it's actually the wounded feminine energy that manipulates.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
feel that's important to mention because I think that we just kind of sometimes assume because of the patriarchal system that everything is wounded masculine, and no. Wounded feminine energy is actually the manipulator. It's
Yes.
our wounded feminine. And I mean that for every avatar walking this plane. When I'm talking about the masculine feminine energy, I'm talking about the energy of that's within our light body, not our physical body, right? So we all have the wounded masculine and the divine masculine, and we all have the wounded feminine and the divine feminine. But it is the wounded feminine who manipulates.
Mhm.
She because when you think about it too, like the feminine is the emotional intelligence of us, right? So if our emotions are not aligned, meaning we're in a lot of insecurity, we will manipulate. And I
Mhm.
honestly feel like that is what I disliked so much about females. Because I've
Mm.
talked in older podcasts about how, like, growing up, I was a tomboy. Now I had an older brother too, but I was a tomboy. I always resonated hanging out with males, right? And I always felt threatened by females who also felt threatened by me. And I would always observe this manipulative energy that females did. And I feel
Mhm.
like with men, they're more they're more overt. They're more like, kind of where you stand with them. They don't play those games. That game playing, that's manipulation. That I see that in so many females. And we use our emotions to manipulate.
Mhm.
When we're not emotionally intelligent, that's where I was shown when I had my awakening, like probably over a year ago, like about the energy of manipulation and where have I unconsciously manipulated. And it's through emotion,
Mhm. Because
which,
that's the quickest way to get to people because we have
correct,
like 34,000 emotions.
correct. And it's like, oh my God, which then made me go to this other end of the spectrum of like, oh my God, now I don't want to show my emotions because what if I'm manipulating people with them?
Hmm.
Right? Like kind
Hmm.
of like you're like, oh my God, like that, oh shit, I don't want to do that. Right. So it can make you a little crazy as you go through these sort of like self-awarenesses, but then it's like, yeah, but it's just part of the human program. And that's like what it all drums down to me once I sit with all of it. It comes back to, well, I was manipulated. We've all been manipulated. So of course we manipulate. So I don't have to carry all this guilt and shame about Maria Gingras manipulating. Like every single one of us has, will, is doing it right now, right? Like I'm not right now, but you get what I'm saying. So it's like being able to, it's to me, it's just this journey is just about becoming more self-aware, not so we then judge ourselves. It's so then we evolve from the old patterns, from the old programs, from the manipulation, so we can live in higher frequencies and realities and vibrations. As Sam and I were talking earlier, like she and I literally are living in very different timelines than
Mm.
we ever have been.
Yeah,
And
let's
it's
go into that.
really, yeah, I mean, we've got about, 15 minutes, so why not? I mean, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do
Considering that
it.
just came in. But it's like we like literally jumped lifetimes, timelines, and all because we surrendered, like our last podcast, to what was coming up, and we did not manipulate the situation.
Whoa, you're right. We didn't.
Right. See?
Wow. Wow,
Yeah.
I have all these cool energies in my lower chakras right now, and I just keeping the word. That's truly what intuition is. Like that's truly how you strengthen your intuition. You feel confident in who you are because you're surrendering to everything, and that's when you can be guided. But we grow up in a society that thinks for us, like you said at the beginning. And because so many people are like, well, how do I hone into my intuition? How do I do? It's like you feel it. You feel it. And when someone comes at you with something, if it doesn't feel good, that's what you need to check in with, because it's about to alter your intuitive insight. Like, no one's let down when you listen to your intuition. Doesn't mean you like what happens, but
Or
like,
if it does feel good too, because there's
oh yeah,
there's
yes,
a misconception, I think, that your intuition is only like telling you when bad shit is happening, like
yeah, no,
this is
it's
a
not.
bad energy. Like, no, your intuition will also tell you when things are aligned. That's really what it's telling you. It's telling
Yeah,
you what's aligned. And so if you're embodied and you are allowing yourself to feel energies, that intuitive knowing of either like stay clear, well, it's basically saying that's not aligned for you right now, or it's saying go right there, go right there, and like you can ignore going right there for 12 times, but it's still going to keep telling you you might want to
go
try over
there.
there. Why don't you try over there, see how that works out? Like that's guiding you into onto a path that's aligned, right?
Hmm.
And that's what I feel like Sam and I both experienced
Yep,
in March.
yep. And because our intuition was guiding us.
Yes, it was for some time.
And we maybe we have a lot of love to give, and we mm, I'll speak for me, accepted
Hmm.
situations that didn't deserve my acceptance anymore, or they didn't need to be accepted, because I was using that acceptance of something as an excuse to not listen to my intuition. And so it made me start to like dim my happiness, dim me. And when I got to a point of like, this doesn't feel okay, my intuition was like, because this is what's been happening. Like,
Because
this
it
is what it
hasn't been
is.
okay.
Yeah. And I was like, all right, well, I set the intentions to release all lower vibrational attachments and buckle up, sister.
Yeah.
And I literally shifted timelines. Like, how I feel right now, I don't even know who I was in March. Like, I I can't even put into words that version of me.
Same.
Like, yeah, like I look in the mirror and I'm like, are you even the same person? Like, your avatar, I think, is the same. I don't really know. Like, maybe my eyes haven't changed yet. I don't know. But like, this is what we mean when there's so much internal energies happening, but sometimes your external takes longer to catch up. So you have to listen to your intuition. Maria's external also shifted because she moved to frickin' New Mexico. Maybe I will one day too. Who knows? But yeah, we shifted
But my
timelines.
external shifted because my
Yeah.
internal had to. I
Yeah.
had to come to
Oh
a
yeah.
place of acceptance that what was not working,
Mm, you're
and
right.
release my attachment. And that's, for me, I as Sam said, yes, have a lot of love to give, but also have a lot of attachment.
Hmm.
And now I can see that now. Like, I mean, I've always had an awareness of that, but like can really see that now that I'm giving more love to the situation that I stepped away from now than I ever did when I thought staying in that was giving it love. I was
Mm,
attached. It was my own fear. Even though
yeah.
intuitively I've been getting guidance for, like we were saying, some time that this is not the aligned path right now. It's not working right now, right? You're resisting, right? And it goes back to last week's podcast, surrender. So when I finally, and I say finally, but I kind of take that back. That's my ego coming through right now. It all happened just how it was meant to happen.
Yep.
We are, we will only make changes in our life when we're truly ready. That's what
Hmm.
it comes down to. And that's what I tell everyone I coach. I tell people to stop being so hard on themselves, especially when we're on this conscious, evolving, healing, growing journey. We can get very caught up in all the things we need to fix, right? And we can get very stuck in even more self judgment and putting more pressure on ourselves. Trust me, when we're ready, things will happen energetically to give us that little extra push. And that's what's been happening for me since February. Energetically, things in my external world had to get loud for me to finally, there's my finally again, for me to, in divine time, be ready.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's
Mhm.
being able to have compassion and grace for yourself at whatever you're navigating when you know it's not aligned. And this could be a multitude of things. It could be your job, it could be your marriage, it could be a friendship, it could be a family relationship, it could be a multitude of things. But there's a knowing in you that it's not aligned, but you're not ready to leave it yet. And that is
Mhm.
okay. Give yourself permission that that's okay, because that's acceptance. And that's truly the energy of acceptance. What I feel like you were referencing before is more tolerance than acceptance, because acceptance is kind of just this natural thing that happens when you let go. Like when you truly let go of things, this feeling of acceptance comes in. Now, tolerance is something that I have been the name of my game my whole life. I have tolerated a lot because I do have a lot of love to give. And I know that. So I just think if I just keep giving more love to this situation, if I just keep giving more love to this person or whatever this is, it's going to be okay. And I'll just tolerate anything that comes as a result of that. But that's
Yep.
not
No,
acceptance.
that's not
It
acceptance.
feels very
Acceptance
different.
is,
It feels
yes,
very
you're right.
different.
You're right. It does.
It's a very like
It
tolerance to
is.
me is it's like forced. You're like forcing yourself to like put up with something in the name of love, right? But it's like, but that's not acceptance. Because to me, when I embody acceptance, I just feel it. Like I'm not
Hmm.
trying to accept a situation.
Yep.
It's kind of like forgiveness. I'm not trying to, it just kind of
It happens.
naturally happens as I've allowed myself to grieve the attachments, to feel all of the lower vibration energies, right? And then it naturally just flows through. You're like, oh my God, I accept this. And I think that that's why you and I feel also like we're in a different lifetime now, because we've accepted what was.
Yeah.
Boom.
Boom. Yeah. Hmm.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I've been sharing that with people that come for readings or my coaching clients, where I'm like, the more we're resisting something, the more we're trying to control it. Right. And so when you just use the word tolerant, I'm like, yes, that's exactly what it is. That,
Mm.
yes. Cause it's kind of, it's constricting.
Very.
Right. But it's like, okay, if I can't get out of this environment right now, like there's too many variables happening right now, what part of this situation can I accept? Right. Like within
Right.
me
Right.
to make this situation more tolerable until I'm fully ready to shift.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And when is enough enough? Because I remember at one point, I remember asking you, so like when these things keep happening, like when is it actually considered abuse? Like in general, in life, right? If
Hmm.
we're loving people, when is it actually considered abuse? And that's like,
That
oh,
means, and understand abuse is mental, emotional. It's not
yes,
just
not,
physical.
yeah, not just physical. It's anytime you feel limited, constricted, like little, like
Hmm.
that's what that means.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so you're so right. It's tolerance. Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you asked me that question, how do we
Yeah.
know? I'm like, oh, we already know,
Yeah.
but we're just
Because
not
you're
ready.
asking
We're
it.
not ready to go there. We already know. And we're
Yeah.
still, we're still not ready to go there, basically, until we're ready to go there.
Hmm.
For me, I think it happened the same way for both of us in a sense that the external experiences got really loud.
Yep.
Like
Yes.
you can't ignore it loud.
Yeah.
And if
And
you're gonna ignore it, like then you don't actually love yourself as much as you believe that you do now. And that's what I was
correct.
shown is that you've done so much work to love yourself. You can't ignore this. And you know that.
Hmm. Because saying no to others doesn't mean that you don't love. It means that you're
Correct.
saying yes to you. And a lot of times, well, majority of times, I feel like our soul preps us
Mhm.
for what's to come. It does. I mean, it
Well,
does. We either resist it or we
correct.
accept it and allow it and
Right.
appreciate it and go for the ride. And m- I was shown a lot of things just coming up that I was just healing. And I was like, wow, like we're shifting energy around. I was like, wow, this is so interesting. Like, I wonder what this is preparing me for. And I knew, but I was like, I'm not going to believe it. That's nope. Mm-mm, mm-mm. Because I've had people tell me in the past, readers put into my mindset that this will be end all be all with things. But also, everyone has a choice. And if you're doing your internal work and you're doing stuff for you and you're learning to really love yourself, whoever is in your life, whatever environment you're in, that also needs to shift because we're meant to evolve. And so, like, my soul, both of our souls, were preparing us for these major shifts. And I feel like that's also why we feel like we're in a different timeline because we made so much room for the shift.
Yep.
And it's like, who I said to Maria before we got on, I was like, who am I? Like, who are we?
I'm like, dude, I don't know. I have no idea. I have no
I was
idea.
like, but it's interesting. Like, I'm all about, curious and perfect actions. I have never been so curious about life, though. Like, within this
Legit.
last, like, 2 months, I'm like so fucking curious.
Legit.
Like,
Legit.
bring it on, universe. Where are we going next? What's happening? Like, I can handle anything, I feel like, right? Like, because I'm, we're always prepared. We're always being prepped.
Always. Because the soul
Always.
is the prep.
Yeah.
The soul literally, like, I think a quote dropped into me, like, I'm seeing it right now. But it was like basically like ego will tell you to keep preparing. It'll always tell you have to
Mm.
prepare, you have to prepare, you have to be on alert, you have to be ready for this, you have to be ready for that. Meanwhile, the soul is the preparation.
Yep.
It knows, our soul, our spirit, our higher self knows what it came to experience in the human journey. It's not afraid to feel all of the magnitudes of what the human journey brings us. It's not afraid of it. And so it's prepped. It is the preparation. It is the preparation, but the ego is always that voice inside your head that's telling you you have to prepare and plan for, it's always, planning for the future, but we're operating off of past experiences to plan for the future, right? So
Yep.
then we're just recreating the past over and over and over again. But like right now, the shifts that Sam and I just made, and I think that's also why I feel like I feel like I'm in a completely different lifetime now.
Mm-hmm.
Like timeline, lifetime, whatever you want to call it. Like I feel like I'm it definitely in a different reality. I know that. Like, but it's such a surreal feeling to really like acknowledge, like, I feel like my old life was another lifetime.
$1,000%.
Like when we do Akashic Records and we drop into past lives, it's like I feel like my life a month ago is a past life.
Me too. Me too.
And it's really wild. But
Yeah.
it's cool because we surrendered and in divine time when we were ready, we surrendered to what our realities had been for quite some time.
Yeah. We surrendered. And here's something, guys. When you surrender to the now moment, you surrender what's coming up for you. You feel where you're trying to control, resist, make something perfect. When you just surrender to what it is, the universe literally, because your higher self preps, right, aligns you with what you need every single step of the way. And it's people are like, wow, things just like worked out for you. Wow, you're so lucky. It's like, no, I'm pretty aligned. I think I'm aligned, actually,
Yeah.
because I surrendered. Like, I'm not
Yeah,
lucky, I'm aligned.
like the universe didn't just like yeah, it's funny how perspective is reality, and it could on the outside look like, wow, you guys are so lucky, but it's like, yo, I'm not denying I'm very grateful for what I have, but let me tell you the shit show I navigated through. I didn't bypass, I navigated through it head on
Hmm.
to then have these aligned blessings drop in.
Yep. Because if we don't allow ourselves to go through it, it just pops up in another form.
Yep.
Whatever the lesson is that we're trying to bypass. That's why it's like just surrender into the moment and what's going on, because it's the ego that likes to manipulate. It's ego that likes to control. It likes to worry about the future. It's concerned about the past. It's not living in the present. So it's the ego that tries to, well, how can I change this situation to better me in the future? When in reality, like if that's not meant to be your future, it's not going to be, just to let you know. Like
Boom.
it's just not gonna
I
be
love that you said that. It's so true. The ego is like, how can I make this work for
for
me
me.
and in the future? You're right.
Mhm. Yep. And your soul's
Because
like, girl, boy, human,
trust. Would you
just
just trust the
trust.
process? Would you just trust that whatever's meant to unfold in your future is what's going to unfold in your future? Yeah.
Yeah. And
But if
whatever
you're,
you
God,
whatever you can't change, because that's things that like my ego's been popping in a like on and off, right? Like, well, if you did this or if this happened, it's like, but that doesn't matter. Like
right,
I go right into my heart and I'm like, but none of that matters.
right,
None of it.
right,
Because guess what? It didn't happen.
right,
And we're in this now moment.
right.
So let's allow our highest timeline. Like, let's come on, get on board here. You go. Let's go. And then once you have that conversation, it's like, oh, okay. Yiddy ho, here I go.
Right?
Yiddy
Ego,
ho.
stop trying to manipulate, would ya? It's really, it's just, it's not, again, Sam and I do talk a lot about ego and higher self because it's really what this is all about. But like, it's not, the ego is not a bad thing. And I just had
Right.
this conversation with somebody the other day about how, like, we're not here to kill the ego off, banish it, shame it. Like I've said it before, like, that's itself doing that to itself.
Right.
It's about integrating the ego and becoming aware of it, like know thyself, meaning know thy ego, but know thy higher self, know thy whole self, right? And when you know it, then it doesn't do that manipulation as much because it's not unconsciously controlling your behavior anymore. You're like, oh, there's my ego, there it is again, there she is,
How you
she's
doing?
so crafty. I mean, shit, she manipulates the shit out of me.
Yep.
Damn, she's smart.
Yep. But
She knows how to
self
get inside
is,
my head. Oh, wait, she's there.
yep. The higher self is just as clever though,
It
because
is.
it knows what your ego is going to be trying to do and look for and
Correct.
stop.
Correct. So it'll just keep dropping more seeds for you. It'll drop it again. It'll drop it again. It'll be like, you think you're supposed to move here? Okay, we're going to just keep making sure that you know this is where you're meant to go in your next travels. And it's going to
Mm-hmm.
keep coming up again. And you're going to be like, you're going to get hit so many times with the signs. Eventually, you're like, you know what? Maybe I'm going to trust this.
Yeah.
Maybe
Maybe
I'm
I
going to
should listen.
surrender and stop allowing my ego to manipulate what it thinks it wants this outcome. Because I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
tell you that ego is really just trying to keep you in the past. And
Yep.
most of us aren't really thrilled with our past, but yet we somehow keep recreating it because it's what we know. And so it's comfortable, even though most of us don't look to our past with a lot of joy, at least people I've talked to. It's like all the past shit, right? And then we're like, oh, why is it keep, well, because we keep recreating it because that's what the ego is comfortable with. So
Mm-hmm.
it will manipulate us to continue to create the same timelines. So when you surrender and jump a complete different lifetime, like the two of us just have, let me tell you, pretty badass.
Yeah, badass. I'll end with this. I saw this meme or something the other day, or it was this guy actually, like a video, and he was crying, and it said the healing journey isn't about preparing you for more trauma. It's preparing you for the energy and the feeling of joy.
Boom.
I
I
was
love
like,
that.
oh,
I've
that
seen
is
that before and I
so
love it.
true.
Yep. Yeah.
Because I feel
Yeah.
so much joy despite feeling like I should be super depressed. I'm like, no, I'm like high vibing right now.
Right? Because think about it. If we're not healing the trauma simultaneously, we don't allow ourselves to feel the joy.
Correct.
So by
Mhm.
healing it, we now allow ourselves for real, authentic, deep connections with people, joyful life moments that you probably never envisioned, right? But in
Ever.
order to allow yourself to experience and receive that, we have to simultaneously be healing all of the other bullshit. So, hey,
Yep. All
it's
the
what we do.
caca.
It's what we do. What we do. And we like doing it with all of you. So, thank you for listening, for doing the work, for surrendering, for choosing to become aware of where you manipulate, even though it's super uncomfortable when you start to like go, holy shit,
Yeah.
I'm a master manipulator.
Or I'm a master, empowering manifester of love.
Boom. Yin
We love
yang.
you guys.
Love ya. See you on the other side.
Woo woo.